And now throughout the whole show of the Walking Dead main series, we follow Rick Grimes, the main character of the show, the most iconic character from The Walking Dead. And then we actually follow his journey and his story, and we do notice some changes in his personality and how he descends into a very dark place in his life. So today's video is going to be about how did Rick's personality change and how was he able to get back out of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Now, before we actually get into the video, I'd like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And new subscribers, welcome to this channel. I really appreciate you guys watching the content. And we are currently at 918 subscribers, and this growth is all because of you guys. And let's reach that 1,000 subscriber goal. And now, without further ado, let's get into the video. And now, from the start of The Walking Dead, we follow Rick Grimes, or in this phase of Season 1, Officer Friendly. He is a character that is not aware of anything that's happened in the apocalypse. He doesn't know what's going on, and from the time he woke up from his coma, we see that Rick does show great leadership and survival instincts, even though he missed out 2 to 3 months of the apocalypse. But with his great leadership skills, Rick faces a lot of problems throughout the whole show, and he suffers many losses within the show. And the first example of a significant loss that Rick has faced was his best friend Shane Walsh. And now with Shane's death, Rick was in a very bad position there, because again, at the one side he was his best friend, but at the other side Shane was a threat to the group. So in this moment right here, Rick had to make the hard decision of killing Shane off. Now many people do say, and it does show that in the show, that Shane did want to die, right? He didn't want to live on in this world anymore, and he went down such a dark path that he couldn't come out of it. And Shane in this season really does mirror what Rick is going to become later on in the show. And now after Shane's death, we do notice Rick having a very significant change in his character. He's more aggressive, and he takes his role as a leader very seriously. And we do hear him say, "This is not a democracy anymore," meaning that no one else has an opinion in the group, and it's only Rick's opinion that matters, which will keep them alive. So you could see here that Rick's personality changes, his mood changes, his a role as a leader kind of changes to where he tells the group that he's the only one that is going to keep them alive, and he's the only one that's ensuring their survival. And now when we actually get to the prison episodes, Rick's behavior is a little bit more extreme, right? He doesn't think twice about killing. He's not officer friendly anymore, and we could see that when the prisoners actually meet the group, and he does not hesitate twice to kill Thomas. But to be honest, he did deserve it, and Rick did the right thing in that moment. And now another key moment where Rick changes his personality drastically is Laurie's death. And now this moment right here is very integral for Rick's character. It's because he goes down such a dark path. He takes such a big mental toll that he's not fit to even lead the group anymore. And now we could see that right after Laurie's death, Rick just goes ballistic. And what do I mean by this? It's when he goes inside the jail cells and then he just starts wailing on walkers. He starts killing them. He doesn't care. It's kind of like a beast awoken inside of him. And even we see that his mental state is not all that right is when Glenn actually comes to check up on Rick, and then Rick is actually about to kill him and throws him away. So you could see here that Rick, he's in a very bad mental state, and he just doesn't even know what's going on around him. And now another key moment to actually point out from this season is that Rick starts seeing Laurie, and this does really show that the state that he's in this season, that he starts seeing Laurie, he starts screaming at her. And for example, when Tyrese and Sasha came and they're asking Rick to actually have a place in the prison, to let them in, but he starts seeing Laurie, of course, and then he starts screaming, and it just scares everyone away. And now another thing to actually point out is when Rick starts getting the phone calls, and this moment actually does have a bigger meaning to it, and Rick is actually hearing all of the people that are dead, like Shane and Jim and Laurie and all these other characters, for example Jackie as well, right? He hears all of them, and it just shows the immense amount of guilt that Rick has for their deaths. He blames himself for everyone's deaths, and it does really show how much of a good leader he is. And all of that responsibility is on his shoulders right now, and it's just driving him to a really, really bad place, and it's just crushing him from the inside. And now, to be more specific about this, we could actually see proof that Rick is experiencing schizophrenia. And one big reason for that is because, one, he was hearing the noises from the telephone, and the telephone, of course, there was no one on the other line, and he was hearing all of that in his head. And, he thinks that the voices are real. He's like having conversations and stuff like that with them. And also he's seeing Lori. And this is all because of the grief and loss he experienced, which made him experience schizophrenia at the end of the day. And now let's actually skip to the end of season 3, and Rick was actually able to recover himself and to find a better path when he actually took in the governor's people. And from here he actually learns that he has to give people a chance. He has to be a better person, because in this world you need to be a better person to actually survive. And now, during the events of season 4, Rick is a much better leader. He's developed, he made his own community in the prison, and everything is going fine until the governor comes back. And now let's just skip towards the ending of the governor arc, when the governor sadly kills Herschel. And over here, Rick and the group are actually forced to move out, and all of them are scattered, with Rick thinking that Judith is dead. And now with Rick's journey going forward, he's with Carl and Michonne. Later on, he meets up with Daryl. Now this moment right here, he actually meets a group called the Claimers. And now when this group actually does show up, we notice that Rick becomes way more ruthless. And what do I mean by that? We see that in a very tight position, Rick has to let everything out. Basically, he has to let the beast out within him, and he bites off Joe's throat, the leader of the Claimers. And also he actually kills the other member who's actually about to kill Carl, and he kills him in a very horrific way. Even though they did deserve that, it shows that Rick is a very violent person at this point. He doesn't care about being a good person, and also he has that experience from the governor before, where he tried to talk him out of it. He was like, we could all live together, but the governor did not listen to him. So at this point, he doesn't trust anybody, and he's willing to do what it takes to survive. And now, after their experience with the Claimers, Rick, Carl, Michonne, and Daryl actually make their way to Terminus. And now Terminus is a very integral part in The Walking Dead, and for Rick's character especially, it's a very integral part of his story. And how does his character change, and how does his personality change, and how does he go to that path of darkness? And now when they actually make it to Terminus, Rick is actually the first one to figure out that something is up. And this is because of his experience with the governor and with Joe. He is way more cautious now. And, when they actually do find out that something is up by seeing Glenn's watch and the poncho that Maggie had, when they decided to fight the people at Terminus, they got the better of the group and they shoved them in a train cart. Now, with all the group together, they actually come up with a plan to actually take down Terminus. And now when Rick, Daryl, Glenn, and Bob were actually about to be slaughtered by Gareth, Rick embraces his red machete self, and this version of Rick Grimes is one of the most iconic versions of Rick Grimes, and everyone calls him Red Machete Rick. And the reasoning for that is that when Gareth actually asks him where did he hide those weapons in that bag, and Rick actually tells him everything about it, this shows the level of confidence that Rick has, and the sheer determination and will that he has to kill Gareth. And with that, Rick actually makes Gareth a promise that he is going to kill him with that red machete that he's mentioned. And now with Carol's help, when the group is actually able to escape Terminus, Rick actually shows that he wants them to suffer. And what do I mean by that? Basically, when Bob kills one of the Terminus members in the slaughter room, Rick actually tells him not to put him down and to let him turn. And also when they were actually able to escape Terminus, Rick wants to go back with all the weapons and to finish them off. And now if you really look at it in a way, Rick was right there. Even though as aggressive as he is, even though, like, you know, as crazy as he seems at this point, Rick was right there, because if they actually went with Rick's decision to go back and to take them all down, they wouldn't have to experience what they experienced in the church. And now when the group actually meets Gabriel, you know, they actually keep this mentality that they are always in doubt and they always are cautious, and they keep this mentality even later on in the show, but it really starts here, that they don't trust Gabriel and they think that he's up to something. And also because of their experience with Terminus and just everything else and everything that they've been through, they're very, very cautious now, and almost everybody they meet, they think that they're some sort of cannibals, or they're there to like raid them and rob them, right? Or even to kill them. And they actually do think that Gabriel is up to something, which of course he's not. He becomes like a huge character later on, and he's one of the best characters. But you know, in the start here, when the show was going on, and you know, even if you watch the show like, you know, blindly and you don't know what's gonna happen, it does seem like that Gabriel is hiding something. And now the person that actually has the most doubt in Gabriel is Rick himself. And you know, he has mentioned multiple times to Gabriel that if anything happens to me or my group, I'm going to kill you. And of course, like, you know, this shows that Rick will take any means necessary to actually protect his people. And you know, he could go as far as he could go to actually ensure their safety. And then when Bob actually gets taken, Rick thinks that it's Gabriel, and everyone else in the group thinks it's Gabriel. But when Bob actually does show up, he tells them that, yeah, you know, Gareth is behind this. Now, when Abraham was actually about to take Eugene and the bus, Rick shows his leadership for his group, and he's like, we can't leave without Daryl and Carol, where Abraham is like, that's their problem, we have to leave for Washington right now because Eugene's in trouble. Now, the difference here is that Abraham is willing to risk Daryl and Carol for the betterment of mankind, where Rick only cares about his group and he just wants to ensure their safety, and he will take any means necessary. He will even wait it out in these dangerous conditions to actually ensure that Daryl and Carol make it back safely. And now when Gareth actually comes to the church, Rick and the group, they actually have the jump on him, right? You know, they outsmart him, and then they're able to actually corner them. And with that being said, Gareth tries making a deal with Rick that he won't see them again, and you know, they should just go their separate ways. But Rick is not taking it. He's not that same person from the earlier seasons. In this case, he will ensure that they are dead, and he actually does say to Gareth that I already made you a promise, and he kills him with that same red machete. Now, again, this shows Rick's determination and his lack of trust just for everybody. And in this case here, yeah, he did the right thing, right? I mean, you already know that Gareth, if they were spared, they were gonna go and actually do the same thing over and over and over again with other people. So Rick saved a lot of other people's lives from Gareth. And now after this, like, you know, the arc of those police officers actually start, and with those group of people, we could see Rick being way more aggressive with them, and you know, we could actually see remnants of Shane inside of Rick in this season. And you know, he just takes any means necessary to survive and to actually save Carol and Beth from these people. And now, like, you know, from here we could actually see that Rick is making a deal with these cops, and you know, he's asking them if they want to live, and he actually ends up killing one of them. Now, you know, to sum up this whole season on how Rick is, right, like his whole mental behavior, because you know, going through everything in this whole season or even through the whole show, it becomes a little too complex. So in this whole season right here, Rick is just a feral beast, right? He's a beast that just needs to be awoken, and just the slightest little touch will set him off. And you know, he's always on edge, he's always on guard, right? And a perfect example of this is when Aaron comes, and you know, after Beth's death and all of that, with their whole experiences with Terminus back in 60 minutes, and then this guy dies right here. So again, you know, it does show that Rick is not taking it anymore. He's not taking any risk anymore. He wants everyone to be safe. And now when the group actually makes it to Alexandria, it shows that Rick is very paranoid from his experience at Terminus, and you know, rightfully so. I did mention that, you know, he's very cautious, and you know, he just wants the group to stay safe, but that comes with a lot of paranoia as well because of his
children with him, and also the people that he cares about, and he actually calls them family now, and he doesn't want to put any of them in danger. And that's why Alexandria seems a little off to him, because he thinks that there can't be a place like this that is kind of like the old world. And Rick is the only one that's thinking that. The rest of the group have a good feeling about it, but Rick's gut feeling is he thinks that it's not right, but he agrees with it because the group says that it's a good idea. And in this instance right here, Rick was proven wrong, and he actually does see that people could be good. There are good communities out there, and his children and his family are safe now. And now when Deanna actually takes Rick's interview, this is a very integral part as well. It's because when Deanna actually does say that Aaron says that I could trust you, Rick says to her that Aaron doesn't know him. He's killed people. He doesn't even know how many by now, but he knows why they're all dead. Now, this could be seen as a clear threat to Alexandria, is because he's kind of telling her that, he kills people without thought. He didn't keep track of how many people did he kill, but he knows why they're all dead, because they threatened him and his group. So he's basically saying to Deanna that, don't try anything, because I will not hesitate to kill you and your community's members as well. Now, after staying at Alexandria for a bit, Rick does realize that this community is weak. Now, he does say to Deanna that, after seeing Jesse being abused, right, he does say to her that, we have to exile Pete or I'll have to kill him. Now, Deanna is of course against that, right? Because again, this community hasn't experienced the stuff that Rick and his group experienced. So, they still kind of have that mindset of the old world where, we could take chances, right? And, just talking stuff out is the answer. But in this case, it's not always the answer in Rick's perspective. And now Rick in this season is so much like Shane, right? And you can see the resemblance by their mentality and the way that they act, and just telling people that if you want to survive, you got to fight for it. And both of these characters have actually said this. Rick says it in season 2 when he beats up Pete, and then he's like, we got to control who lives here. If you don't fight, you die, right? And same thing with Shane in season 2. He actually does say that if you want to survive, you got to fight for it. And also another similarity I actually see between Rick and Shane here is that when Rick sees Jesse and Pete, he actually holds his gun. And I didn't notice it all that much at first, but after inspecting it a little closer, it actually mirrors Shane perfectly. For example, in season 2, when Shane was actually aiming at Rick, and for Lori, he wanted to kill Rick. This is exactly what's happening in this season as well. Rick is looking at Pete and Jesse, and he's holding his gun, and he wants to kill Pete for Jesse. And now when we actually get into the episode where Rick and Pete fight in the middle of Alexandria, when Rick was actually about to kill Pete there, he actually makes this statement to Deanna that you have to control who lives here, and they don't see that what is the real world. They don't understand what is actually going on and how the world is right now, and you have to change. And he actually says that he's not going to let them just sit around like this. He is going to bring a change, where Michonne actually knocks him out. But before she actually knocks him out, like I mentioned before, he says, if you don't fight, you die. And now this shows that Rick is trying to knock some sense into Deanna and everyone else in Alexandria, that the world can't keep on going like this. You have to change if you want to survive. If you want to prolong this community longer, you have to fight, and also you have to control who lives here. But then Deanna actually does consider kicking out Rick. It's because she still doesn't understand where is he coming from and what does he fully mean. And she still thinks that, oh yeah, what Rick is doing is wrong. It's kind of barbaric, and this community can't live like that. But at the end of the day, Rick's opinion and Rick's point of view is right. And now let's actually skip to the moment where Pete kills Reg, and over here Deanna gives Rick the green light to kill Pete. And now in this moment right here, Rick actually does say to everyone that I was wondering how many of you did I have to kill to save your lives. And then he says that, I realized that I don't have to do that, and you guys are going to change. Now over here, Rick does sound a lot like Negan, to be honest. And Negan kind of has that same mentality that to put everyone into place and to save people, you have to kill somebody. And that's not the correct way, because Rick was able to do it without killing anyone. But at first Rick does have that mentality of Negan, where to get everyone into line, to make everyone listen to him, and to make the community safer, he would have killed somebody to actually achieve that goal. And let's actually fast forward to the moment where the walkers infiltrated the community, and there's just a bunch of walkers, a horde of walkers are in Alexandria. Now over here, after Carl gets his eye shot, Rick goes insane again, and he kills every walker in sight, and not single-handedly, of course. He has people with him, but he's the one that actually started that, and he gave everyone the confidence to do that. And in this moment we could actually see that because of his child getting hurt, and because of Carl getting hurt, and his eye being shot, and him thinking that Carl might actually die, it awoken something in him again. And you could see here that Rick is a father first and a leader second. And now this scene right here actually reminds me a lot of season 3 when Rick went insane after Lori died, and it mirrors that scene completely, and it just really does remind me of that scene where when Lori died, Rick went in those cells and he started killing those walkers. He went ballistic, and then he kind of did the same thing again, where when Carl got his eye shot out, he went ballistic again. And after Deanna's death, Rick actually becomes the new leader of Alexandria. And from here you could actually see that Rick is starting to pick up on Deanna's morals, right? He wants to bring people in, and he wants to look for the best in people. And then Rick and Daryl actually end up meeting Jesus, and now here we do see that Rick and the rest of the group wants to make trade with the Hilltop, but then they would have to get rid of Negan for that. And over here you could see that even though Jesus does tell them about Negan, the group gets a little overconfident, and Rick gets overconfident as well. And a big part of that is that when they took out Terminus, they took out the governor, and also they took out just a horde of walkers in the community. So they basically think that they could do anything, but they really don't know what they're getting into. And now this actually leads to them executing their plan of taking out the saviors, and this is agreed upon by everyone that Rick and the group are actually villains in this episode. And the reasoning for that is that they kill the saviors in their sleep. And this shows how confident Rick and the group are that they're gonna win no matter what. And throughout the whole show of The Walking Dead, this was the only wrong leadership decision that Rick actually made. And now let's actually fast forward to the season 6 finale, Last Day on Earth. And this is the episode where Negan actually shows up. And throughout the whole episode, Rick and the group are actually being cornered over and over and over again by the saviors. And the saviors are actually just showing the group that, we have a big amount of numbers, and you guys did a mistake crossing us. And now this is actually the first time we see Rick genuinely helpless, and he is terrified in this episode. And with the sheer amount of numbers that the saviors have, and them being in a line, and Negan having the bat, there's literally no way out of this. And Negan makes sure that Rick feels that, and as the viewers, and just looking at this episode, this is the first time we're seeing Rick ever like this, and it's just a very weird position for him to be in. And now, this moment right here is not like Terminus, right? Where Carol came and, she helped them out and, they're able to escape, without a scratch. No, this moment right here, Rick is helpless. The group is helpless. And, this really does bring a big change in Rick's life. And this moment right here is integral for his character going forward. And now after Negan actually kills Glenn and Abrahams, Rick still shows some resiliency to Negan. Then when Negan actually takes him to the RV, he keeps on torturing him and, he's keep on taunting him, but still Rick does not back down. He still wants to kill Negan. That's until Negan threatens to kill Carl or chop his arm off. Over here we see Rick break, and in this moment right here, this is the only moment where Rick Grimes actually broke down and actually submitted to somebody. And, it's just insane seeing that. And now throughout season 7, Rick actually does stay submitted to Negan, and this is probably the lowest point that Rick Grimes was in, and not as his moral compass or anything like that, but just him as a leader. He practically just gave up being leader, and he just didn't want anyone else to die, so he didn't take the chance to actually fight back Negan, and he just says to everyone that this is how life is, Negan's in charge, not me, so we have to listen to him. And now Rick actually does get a change of heart at the end of season 7 when Daryl escapes Negan's captivity. Now, when it comes to All Out War, aka Season 8, there's so much to talk about for Rick Grimes' character, but I'm going to be highlighting a couple of key moments and, just what Rick Grimes actually becomes in this season. And now, in this season, Rick Grimes actually does take that leadership role again, right, by rallying up all three communities, Hilltop, Alexandria, and the Kingdom, and he leads them on a war with the Saviors. It's because they're tired of this, oppression by the Saviors, and, they want to live free lives that are not under them. And Rick is the one that's leading this war. And also, Rick is just hell-bent on killing Negan, and he really wants revenge on Negan for killing Glenn and Abraham. And we could see that here is that he becomes an unstoppable force. He will go any means necessary just to get to Negan. But one drastic moment that actually happens in Rick's life is Carl's death, and Carl's death hits Rick really hard, and it's to the point where Rick goes so crazy. And in my opinion, season 8 Rick is kind of more crazy than season 5 Rick, and of course that's because of the grief and the loss. And we could see that Rick Grimes' character goes ballistic when he suffers a great amount of loss. We've seen that with Shane, we've seen that with Lori, and now we're seeing this with Carl, where when Carl died, he wasn't able to even express his emotions of sadness all that much. And then the next day he went savior hunting with Morgan, and they lied to the saviors and they just ended up killing all of them. And again, it shows how far gone is Rick and how much grief is he experiencing at this moment. And now, before Carl actually died, he left letters for Negan, Rick, and the rest of the group. And in Rick's letter, he actually tells Rick to spare Negan and that his mercy prevails his wrath. And now, until the very end of Season 8, Rick always kept that mindset and that goal of killing Negan until the very end, when he actually mentions Carl's name and gets Negan emotional and eventually slits his throat. Now, Rick had a choice there to actually leave Negan for dead or to actually save him, and he ends up saving him. And with this moment right here, Rick is able to destroy everything that Negan stood for and what that name stood for, but also sparing the person himself. And this is a way for him to honor Carl's wishes and to actually hope for a brighter future. And he actually does state that his ways are finished, Negan's ways are finished, and we have to join together to actually survive in this world. And at the end of the day, the living shouldn't fight amongst each other, and they should be going up against the dead. And now this is the moment right here where Rick actually finds peace. And this is the moment where Rick realizes that you have to show people mercy in this world in order to thrive in it. And now from here we actually get into season 9 of The Walking Dead. And in this season of The Walking Dead, this is Rick Grimes' final episode. And in this season, he's actually a lot like his Officer Friendly stage, right? Where he wants peace amongst everyone. He doesn't want to kill the living, and he actually acts more like a police officer in this season. For example, when the saviors were actually disappearing, he was interrogating the suspects. And now in Rick Grimes' final episode, what comes after, he sees hallucinations of Herschel and Shane and Sasha. And specifically for Herschel and Shane, he feels really bad for their deaths. For Shane, he regrets killing him, right? He says, "I'm sorry for killing you." And Shane actually tells him to go back to his red machete phase, which does hint of the future. And when he talks to Herschel, he actually says that, "I'm sorry how you went out." And again, he feels guilty about Herschel's death as well, that he wasn't able to do anything. And now with a horde of walkers going on the bridge that everybody was working on for trading in communities and, just for a better connection of the communities, Rick does a final act of leadership and he blows up the bridge. And he figures out that this is my family and I have to protect them in any cost. And then he sacrifices himself to actually save everybody else's life. And now after this moment, Rick Grimes gets taken by the CRM because of Jadis. And this is the last time we're going to see him in a while. And after this moment right here, we see him in the end of season 11 trying to escape the CRM. And he's just trying to get back to his family, and there is proof that he's going to be going back to his red machete phase. He's going to be going back to that dark path again. And what makes him go back to that path, we don't know yet. So let's just see in the Walking Dead Summit, which is coming out next year.
And now that's it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. And this is my first time making a character breakdown video. And there was a lot of other stuff I really wanted to add. There were a lot of other moments I really wanted to add, but I just couldn't. And I added what I thought was important. So please comment down any feedback you guys have on how I could improve upon my videos, because I really enjoy making Walking Dead videos. And making this one was really fun to make. And just going through Rick Grimes' life really made me emotional, as you could say, right? But other than that, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down what else you guys would like to see and what other characters you guys would like me to talk about in my future videos. And let's reach that 1,000 subscriber goal, and we are so close to that goal. Currently, at the time of this recording, we are currently at 941 subscribers. So subscribe for more Walking Dead content. Thank you.